There is a sentence in finance that people repeat without understanding how brutal it is. If you do not understand bonds, you do not understand money. The point of that sentence is not bonds. The point is that there is a layer underneath the thing everybody argues about, and if you do not operate on that layer, everything you say about money is decoration. You are commenting on weather, while someone else is adjusting pressure. I'm going to say the version of that sentence that applies to you. If you do not understand assumption, you do not understand money. And almost nobody does. Not the people teaching you to budget, not the people teaching you to hustle, not the people teaching you to raise your vibration and trust the universe. All of them are standing on the surface, describing effects to each other in enormous detail with tremendous confidence, and not one of them is touching the mechanism. Neville Goddard understood the mechanism, and once you see it, you cannot unsee how strange it is that an entire civilization organizes itself around an effect and calls it a cause. Here is the first thing you have to accept, and it will offend the part of you that has worked hard. Money is not the subject. Money has never been the subject. Money is a report. Think about what a report actually is. A report does not decide anything. A report tells you what has already been decided somewhere else. Your bank balance is not a force acting on your life. It is a printout. It is the final page of a process that began somewhere you were not looking, and by the time it reaches the page, the decision is old news. So when you spend your evening staring at that number, trying to feel better about it, trying to make it move with intensity or gratitude or discipline, you are arguing with a printout. You might as well argue with a thermometer about the temperature of a room. The temperature is set somewhere else. The thermometer is honest. Now what sets the temperature? Assumption. And I need to define this word properly because it has been degraded into something soft and useless by an industry that needed it to sound gentle. An assumption is not a belief. A belief is something you hold. You can hold a belief and still behave as if it were not true, and most people do this all day long. A belief lives in the part of the mind that talks. It is opinion with better posture. An assumption is not hope. Hope is a request pointed at the future. Hope contains, inside itself, an admission that the thing is not here. An assumption is not positive thinking. Positive thinking is commentary about a state. It is a man standing outside a house describing how nice it looks. An assumption is occupation. It is the state you are inside of right now without effort, without announcement, without proof. It is what you take for granted so completely that you do not notice you are taking it. Here is the test. What do you assume about gravity? You cannot really answer that, can you? Because you do not think about gravity. You do not affirm it. You do not visualize the floor holding you. You simply move through a world in which the floor holds you, and every action you take is silently built on that fact. That is what an assumption feels like from the inside. Nothing. It feels like nothing at all. And right now, you are assuming lack with exactly that quality, not dramatically, not consciously. You are moving through a world in which there is not enough, and every decision you make is silently built on that floor, and you no longer notice the floor because you have never once stood anywhere else. This is why people say the law is not working for them. The law is working with terrifying precision. It is executing the instruction you have not noticed you are giving. Now let me show you the layer, because this is the part that changes how you see everything. Everything the world calls money advice operates on effects. Cut this expense. Invest in that. Learn this skill. Negotiate harder. Wake up earlier. All of it is real. None of it is causal. It is arithmetic performed inside a container, and the container was set long before the arithmetic started. Watch what happens when you move a person from one container to another without changing anything else. Take someone who assumes scarcity and hand them a large sum. What happens is well documented, and it happens with a consistency that should disturb you. The sum comes in, and within a period of time the container reasserts itself. The money finds a way out. There is always a story. There is always a reason, a business opportunity, a family emergency, a series of decisions that each looked defensible on their own. And at the end, the number returns to the range the person was assuming. Now take someone who assumes wealth and remove everything. Same documentation, same consistency. The number climbs back, not because of grit, because of a flaw. He is standing on something you cannot see, and everything he does is built on it, including the decisions he makes when he has nothing. Two men, same economy, same country, Same rules, completely different results, and neither one was thinking about the reason. That is what it means to say money is downstream of assumption. It is not a poetic statement, it is a mechanical one. So here is the uncomfortable question. If assumption sets the container, why does knowing this change nothing for most people? Because they treat assumption as something to acquire, and it is not. It is something you already have running at full volume right now. You do not need to install an assumption. You are never without one. There is no neutral setting. The moment you are conscious, you are assuming something about what is available to you, and that assumption is being expressed in your posture, your speech, your reflexes, and the size of the thoughts you allow yourself to finish, which means you are not learning to assume. You are changing what you already assume, and those are radically different jobs. The first is addition, the second is eviction. Let me show you how to read your current assumption. Since it does not announce itself, do not look at what you say you want. Wanting tells you nothing. Everyone wants. The man in the worst position on earth wants the most, with the most intensity, and it moves nothing because wanting is the emotional signature of separation. Instead, look at what you find normal. What is the size of a number that does not make your body react? For some people it is 50, for some it is 5,000. There is a line somewhere in you, and above that line a number stops being information and becomes an event. Your body reacts. Something tightens. Something evaluates. That line is the visible edge of your assumption. That is your container, measured in plain numbers without any spiritual language required. And here is the part that will stay with you. That line is not a reflection of your income. Your income is a reflection of that line. Look at how you speak about future money. Do you say when, or do you say if? Not in your affirmations. In ordinary conversation, when you are not being spiritual, when the words are moving faster than you're monitoring. That word is a direct readout of your assumption, and it is far more accurate than anything you wrote in a journal. Look at what you do when an unexpected expense arrives. Not the amount, the speed of the reaction. Does your body respond before you have any information about whether it is actually a problem? That pre-response is the assumption speaking. It ran before the facts arrived because assumptions do not wait for facts. Facts arrive later and get sorted into the container. Look at how you feel when you imagine having far more than you need. Not the fantasy, the residue after the fantasy. Most people, when they sit inside a very large number for more than a minute, feel something they never admit out loud. Discomfort, a sense of it being unearned, a vague guilt, a feeling of being watched. That residue is your actual assumption, and it will quietly manage your finances for the rest of your life if it is never confronted. Nobody has an unlimited container by accident, and nobody has a small one by accident either. Now I want to address the specific illiteracy that keeps intelligent people broke, because you are probably guilty of it, and it is not your fault. You were taught to negotiate with effects. When money is tight, what do? You make a plan. You look at the numbers. You find where to cut. You look for another source. All perfectly reasonable, and I am not telling you to stop being competent. But notice what is happening underneath. Every one of those moves is performed by a man who has accepted the container as fixed and is rearranging furniture inside it. And the man doing the rearranging is confirming with every calculation that this is the size of his world. The man who understands the mechanism does something that looks irresponsible from the outside. He addresses the container first. He changes what he assumes before he decides what to do, and then his decisions come out different, not because he was clever, but because a different man was making them. That is the whole thing. Not better decisions. A different decider. Let me put both men in the same room so you can see it happen. Two people are told about the same opportunity, same information, same day, delivered in the same words. The first one hears it, and within a second, something in him has already calculated why it is not for him. He does not experience this as a decision. He experiences it as an accurate reading of the situation. Too expensive. Bad timing. Probably a catch. He will tell you he thought it through and he genuinely believes that, but the conclusion arrived before any thinking occurred. The thinking came afterward to justify a verdict the container had already issued. The second one hears the same sentence, and something in him has already moved toward it. Also, without deliberation. He will spend the next 10 minutes working out how, and the how will feel like the hard part, when the hard part was decided in that first silent second. Now watch what happens over 10 years of that. Not one dramatic difference. Thousands of small silent verdicts, each one issued before conscious thought, each one shaping which doors were even considered. And at the end, 2 lives that look like the product of different intelligence, different luck, or different work ethic, and are actually the product of different flaws. You have been issuing those verdicts all your life. You have never once heard yourself do it, because it happens beneath the level where hearing occurs. Now people always ask the same thing at this point. If this is real, why do wealthy people never talk about it? Because they cannot. You cannot describe a flaw you have never been off of. Ask a man who has always had money what he assumes about money, and he will say something useless. He will tell you about discipline. He will tell you about opportunity. He will tell you about timing. He will give you the surface explanation sincerely, because that is genuinely all he can see. The mechanism is invisible to him for the same reason water is invisible to a fish. This is why the advice from the top is so consistently unhelpful to the bottom. It is not a conspiracy. It is a translation problem. He is describing what he did inside the container, while you are asking, without knowing it, how to change containers. He answers a question you did not ask, and you take notes, and nothing moves. And it is why the study of successful people rarely produces successful people. You are copying the visible outputs of an invisible setting. It is like copying a man's handwriting in the hope of acquiring his thoughts. Which brings me to the thing that will save you years, if you actually accept it. Information does not transfer assumption. Read that again, because it explains your entire relationship with content. You know more about manifestation than 99% of people alive. You could explain the law to a room, you could correct other people's understanding of it. And the number in your account has not responded to a single hour of that knowledge, and it never will, because knowing about a state and occupying a state are different activities that use different parts of you. You have been treating the mechanism like a subject to study. It is not a subject, it is a place to stand. And here is the trap inside the trap. Studying feels like progress. Every video you watch produces a small chemical reward that resembles movement. You feel like something is happening. You feel closer. And that feeling of getting closer is itself the confirmation of distance. The container is not touched by any of it. You can consume this material for another 5 years and remain exactly where you are, and you will be able to explain with great precision why it should have worked. I would rather you understood one thing tonight and stood on it than understood 20 and stood on nothing. There is one more piece of literacy you need before we go deeper, and it concerns what you are actually spending. You think you spend money. You do not. Money leaves your account as a consequence. What you actually spend every hour of every day is attention, and attention is the only currency that reaches the layer we are talking about. Look at where yours goes. If you give 6 hours of attention to what is missing and 4 minutes of attention to what is desired, you have made a very clear allocation. You have funded lack heavily and funded wealth almost not at all. And then you sit back and wait for a return on the 4 minutes. No one would run a business that way. Nobody would put 99% of their capital into one position and 1% into another, and then be surprised when the portfolio matched the 99. But that is exactly your financial behavior at the level that matters. Your attention has been almost fully allocated to confirming your current container, not by choice, by habit, and habit is simply capital on autopilot. When you understand this, a whole category of advice suddenly makes sense in a way it never did. Do not check the news about your problems. Do not rehearse the story to your friends. Do not narrate your struggle for sympathy. None of this is about positivity. It is about allocation. Every one of those behaviors is a transfer of capital into a position you are trying to exit. Before I go into the second half, where I show you exactly how an assumption hardens into a fact, and the specific point where almost everyone breaks the process without knowing it, let me leave you something. If you want the practical version of what I am describing, the part about locating your line and moving it, I put a recommendation in the pinned comment. It is the clearest material I have found on this specific mechanism. Take a look when you finish. Now let us keep going. So how does an assumption harden into a fact? Neville used that word deliberately. Harden, not manifest, not attract. Harden. It is the language of a substance-changing state, and it tells you the process is physical, gradual and indifferent to your enthusiasm. Here is the sequence, and I want you to see how ordinary it is. It begins with what you take for granted, not what you want. What you no longer question. From that unquestioned floor comes your self-concept, which is simply the answer your body gives to the question of what kind of man is standing here. From self-concept comes attention, because you can only sustain attention on things that make sense for someone like you. From attention comes noticing, and noticing decides which of the 10,000 things in front of you actually reaches your awareness. From noticing comes action, which people mistake for the beginning of the chain when it is nearly the end of it, and from action comes the world's response, which arrives as evidence, and evidence hardens the floor you started on. That is a closed loop. It has no exit built into it. Left alone, it runs for a lifetime and produces a man who is completely certain that his life reflects reality, when his life reflects only the loop. And notice where you have been trying to intervene. At action, always at action, do more, try harder, be consistent. You have been attempting to break a closed loop at the point of least leverage, which is why the results collapse the moment your motivation drops. You are pushing against the current with your arms, while the river was set upstream. The leverage is at the floor. It is the only point in the loop that is not produced by the loop. Now, the specific place where almost everyone breaks the process, and it is not where you think. You do not break it by doubting. Doubt is normal and largely harmless. You break it by demanding evidence. Here is what that looks like in practice. You adopt a new assumption. You hold it well for a day or two, it feels clean. And then you turn to the world and ask, silently, has it worked yet? You check the account. You check your inbox. You scan for signs. You look for a small confirmation that would let you relax. That request is the fatal move. And the reason is precise, not mystical. To ask for evidence, you must first assume you do not have the thing. The question cannot be formed any other way. You cannot ask if you have arrived while standing inside arrival. The moment you check, you have reoccupied the old state fully at high intensity, and the previous 2 days are erased, not weakened, erased, because the loop does not average your states. It runs on the one you were in most recently and most convincingly. This is why people describe manifestation as fragile. It is not fragile. It is simply obedient. It obeyed you when you assumed, and it obeyed you again when you checked, and you interpreted the second obedience as failure. The man who understands this does not need faith in the ordinary sense. He needs indifference to the report, and indifference to the report is not achieved by force. It comes automatically the moment the state is genuinely occupied, because occupied states have no interest in verification. You do not check whether you still speak your own language, which leads to the instruction that will do more for you than anything else in this video. Stop looking for progress. Progress is a concept that exists only inside distance. A man who assumes a thing has no relationship with progress toward it. The concept does not arise. So when you catch yourself measuring how it is going, understand that the measuring is itself the position you are trying to leave. Now let us make this operational, because I do not want you leaving with philosophy. The first move is to locate your line. I described it earlier. There is a number above which your body reacts. Find it, not by thinking about it, by watching yourself over a few days as numbers appear in your life. Prices, bills, amounts mentioned in conversation. Somewhere there is a threshold where your nervous system switches from information to event. That number is your current container, and until you know where it is, you are working blind. The second move is to move the line, and this is where technique matters, because most people try to move it by a factor of 100, and their body rejects the whole exercise. The rejection is not weakness. It is a legitimate response to an instruction the system cannot process. If your line is at 200, and you attempt to occupy 200,000, nothing happens except a pleasant fantasy and a private sense of failure afterward. The line moves the way a room adjusts to temperature. Slightly, and then it holds, and then it becomes the new normal, and then it can move again. You take a number that is above your line, but not absurd, and you live with it until it becomes uninteresting. Not until you believe it, until you are bored by it. Boredom is the proof of a completed move. Then you do it again. And this is how people who seem to grow steadily actually grow. Not in leaps of imagination, in sequential normalizations that nobody watching ever notices. The third move concerns the window before sleep, and this is the highest leverage minute in your day. When the conscious mind loosens, whatever you carry through that door goes straight into the floor with no resistance. Most people carry the ledger. They carry what is due, what did not come, what it means. They spend the single most powerful minute of the day reinforcing the exact container they spent the whole day complaining about. Do not carry the ledger. Carry a scene so small it could be true tonight, implying the thing is already handled, not a fantasy of arrival, not a celebration. Celebration implies surprise, and surprise implies rarity. Carry something dull, a transaction that goes through without a thought, a number seen with no reaction in the body, a short sentence someone says to you that would only be said to a man who is no longer in difficulty. Then sleep inside it. Do not evaluate it. Do not ask whether it took. The fourth move is the one you will resist, and it is about consumption. Stop taking in money advice at the level of effects while you are working at the level of cause. I am not telling you to be ignorant. I am telling you that the two operations use opposite postures, and doing both at once produces a man who understands everything and holds nothing. Every hour you spend inside content about how hard it is right now, how the economy is moving, how difficult it has become to get ahead, is an hour of capital allocated to the container you are trying to leave. You are allowed to be informed. You are not required to be marinated. And the fifth move is the quietest one. Change how you speak about the future when you are not paying attention. Listen for the word if. Listen for the softening at the end of your claims. Listen for the small laugh you attach to your ambitions to make them acceptable in a room. Each of those is a data point being entered into the floor, and you enter dozens a day without noticing. You do not need to become a person who makes grand declarations. You simply need to stop paying the small tax of self-diminishment every time your future comes up in conversation. There is something else you need to be ready for, because it arrives early and it takes most people out. The report lags. It has to. A report is printed after the fact, and there is no version of this where the printout updates the instant you change the setting. Every real system has delay built into it. You change a thermostat and the room does not respond in that second. Nothing is broken. The mechanism is simply doing what mechanisms do. But here is what happens inside a man during the lag. He changes the setting, and then he watches the thermometer, and the thermometer still reads the old number, and he concludes that the thermostat is not connected to anything. So he goes looking for a different thermostat, a better method, a stronger technique, a teacher with a more compelling explanation, and the entire time the setting he abandoned was working. You have almost certainly done this. You have almost certainly abandoned a state that was in the middle of hardening because the room had not caught up yet, and you have done it repeatedly, which is why your history with this material feels like a series of promising starts. The lag is not a test of faith. It is not the universe checking your commitment. It is a mechanical property of a system that prints after it computes. Treat it as boring engineering, and it stops having power over you. Now here is a second thing that will show up, and this one is more subtle. Other people's money will stop bothering you, and you will notice the change before your account does. Right now, when someone near you does well, something happens in your chest. It is quick. Most people never examine it. It is not exactly envy. It is a comparison being executed automatically, and it produces a small ranking in which you are placed below. That reaction is a literacy failure. It treats money as a fixed pool, where another man's portion reduces yours. That is true of a pie on a table. It is not true of a container because containers are not distributed from a central supply. He did not take yours. He set his own. When your container starts moving, that reaction fades on its own. You will hear about someone's success and feel nothing sharp, and afterward, you will realize that the absence of the reaction was the real signal, not the money. The flatness. The flatness means the ranking mechanism has stopped running, which means you are no longer measuring yourself against a scale that assumes scarcity. Watch for it. It is one of the earliest indicators that the floor has actually moved, and it shows up long before the numbers do. Now let me deal with the objection you are holding, because if I do not, it will quietly close everything I have said. You are thinking about the bill, the real one, the one with a date on it that is not moved by any of this. And there is a voice saying that all of this is very interesting, but there is a concrete situation in front of you that requires actual handling. I agree. Handle it. Handle it fully and competently and without delay. Nothing I have said asks you to stop functioning. But notice which man handles it. That is the entire distinction, and it is not a small one. The same task, performed by a man assuming lack and by a man assuming sufficiency, produces different outcomes because he asks differently, he negotiates differently, he sees options that the braced man cannot see, and he is not radiating the specific quality that makes other people cautious around him. The braced man makes the phone call from a position of need, and everyone on the other end of that call can feel it, and they respond to what they feel, not to what he says. The other man makes the same call as a routine administrative matter, and the conversation goes differently, and afterward he will attribute the difference to luck or to the person he happened to reach. It was never luck. It was the state that made the call. And there is one more piece of illiteracy that I have to name before we close, because it silently governs almost everyone raised outside of money: deserving. Somewhere in you, there is an accounting system that decides whether you have earned the right to a certain amount. It was installed early, it runs constantly, and it is not connected to any mechanism in reality. There is no ledger anywhere in the universe tracking your worthiness. There is no committee. Deserving is not an input to this system. It is a story we tell about outcomes after they occur. You can verify this with your own eyes. Look at who currently has money in this world and try to construct a theory of deserving that accounts for the distribution. You cannot. Nobody can. The correlation is not there, and it has never been there. And every honest person who has looked at this has arrived at the same uncomfortable place, which means the effort you have spent trying to become worthy of wealth was spent on a mechanism that does not exist. That is not a tragedy. It is a refund. You get all of that back tonight, the moment you stop paying into it. The system does not ask whether you deserve. It asks what you assume. That is a colder answer than most people want, and it is also the most generous one available, because worthiness is a door somebody else controls, and assumption is a door that opens from the inside. Now let me finish where we started, with the sentence that opened this. If you do not understand assumption, you do not understand money. And now you understand something that most people who talk about wealth will never understand, including some of the people who have it. You know where the setting lives. You know that the number is a report. You know that the container was set before the arithmetic began, and that no amount of arithmetic will resize it. You also know the trap, which is the most valuable part. You know that studying this will feel like doing it, and that the feeling is a counterfeit. You will be tempted tonight to look for more material on this, to go deeper, to find the version of this idea that finally makes it click. It is already clicked. There is nothing else to find. There is only a state to occupy tonight, in the minute before you sleep, and again tomorrow when the number appears, and your body prepares to react, and you decide for the first time not to. That decision is not small. That decision is the entire mechanism, exposed in one moment, available to you at no cost in a form nobody can gatekeep. Tell me something in the comments and be honest about it, because I read them, and they shape what I make next. Where is your line? Not the number you want, the number where your body starts reacting. Write it down. Most people have never once looked at it directly, and something happens the moment you do, because a container you can see is a container you can move.